Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Formula Next Gen podcast. We're going to start off with the news that Gabriele Bortoleto has just become the new Formula 3 champion. It was sealed on the Friday in qualifying. Qualifying was cut short after Oliver Goethe went to the barriers pretty hard, bringing out the red flag, and the session was not resumed. I don't think this has proved too controversial. I certainly haven't seen as much backlash on online as I was expecting, as it was basically going to go his way anyway. But the session being red flagged, with Oliver Goethe being in the lead actually of the standings at that point, meant that of course Paul Aron could not take pole, could not get those 2 points, and could not mathematically challenge Bortoleto for the championship in the final round. So Bortoleto was crowned champion, still sitting in his car in the pit lane, and he is the new F3 champion first for Brazil. He joins the listed names such as Leclerc and Piastri, most recently Victor Martins, of course. A little bit annoying, especially in the season finale, that this was cut short due to time constraints, but it's a busy weekend in Monza, F1, F2, F3, Porsche Super Cup, and needs must, I suppose. Obviously, this is great for Bortoleto in his rookie season. Do expect him to do very well in his F2 campaign next year, and hopefully in the Monza weekend, Saturday and Sunday coming up in the sprint and the feature. Hopefully, he can get maybe a race win. Who knows, on the podium, just so he can celebrate on the podium hopefully his podium, and of course his championship. Also coming up in this podcast, we're going to be going through my little driver ratings, the little grades I've given them for their first half of the season so far. A bit delayed, we've just had the Zandvoort weekend as well. So I'll be going through a review of that and the Indy Next at Gateway. So we're going to start off with the summer break grades, where I jump on the bandwagon of all the content creators giving little school grades for the drivers, seeing how they've been getting on. So we're going to start off with MP Motorsport and Dennis Hauger, 2021 Formula 3 champion. Is his second year in F2. At this point last year he had 68 points, now he has 82, so it's got better. He's ninth in the standings with 4 podiums, of which 2 are wins, which all come from sprint races. There are rumours of changes happening at the Red Bull Junior team, as there always are, and of course Hauger may find his place there under threat. And with 9th in his second year in F2, that might be looking likely he will get dropped from that team. MP Motorsport won the team's championship last year and brought the drivers' championship to Felipe Drugovich. Was a good car in qualifying overall. But Hauger's success in sprint races shows that he often qualifies towards the back of the top 10. So I'm going to give him a grade C. To improve, he can improve his qualifying, overall his qualifying pace, and what he does well, he can hold off pressure at the front. So when he does start at the front, he can withstand that pressure, as experienced as he is in single-seaters and in F2, to take wins and podiums. Next up, Jehan Daruvala. He's 4th season in Formula 2 now. The only drivers who have had 4 seasons or more in F2 and made it into F1 are Latifi, had about 6 I think, and he had 3 years in F1, and Jack Aitken. He's now in Cadillac Hypercars in the WEC, but he did have 4 years in F2, and of course made his one-off appearance in Zakir 2020 in the Williams, with George moving from Williams to Mercedes to replace Hamilton. Daruvala's had a few good podiums, 3rd in the sprint and the feature in Jeddah, often qualifies in the bottom half of the top 10 or out of the top 10 entirely, which makes it quite difficult to string weekends together, as sometimes you're qualifying 11th and 12th just outside of the reverse grid top 10, and other weekends you could be 9th, 10th on the front row, expected to win the sprint race. So weekend to weekend can go from being right up there expected to win, and the next weekend being almost out of it entirely. So he's faced with a bit of bad luck this season. So of course leading the sprint in Spa before his headrest came loose of all things. I'm going to give him a C+, the plus coming from the fact that he's most likely secured a future in Formula E with Avalanche Andretti. And to improve, he could definitely work on his consistency. A driver that can show very good flashes of flashes of pace, but often one that is not very consistent. Well, he does well. He often stays out of trouble, apart from when he has bad luck, such as his Spa. But he's only had one other DNF, and that was a spin in the Austria sprint. So he definitely does keep out of trouble with other drivers and doesn't make too many mistakes. Next up, Zane Maloney, second in F3 in his debut year. Very good season that was pretty up and down, really, with back-to-back-to-back feature race wins at the triple header finale. He's now 10th in his first year in F2, 78 points, 3 podiums, all in feature races. 10th in the unofficial qualifying standings as well. The opening round in Bahrain, he qualified 18th and made up many positions to finish 3rd, so a very good start of the season. Unfortunately, that form dropped off towards the latter half, with several out of the points finishes. Relatively few mistakes, despite going from Euroformula to FRECA to F2 to F3 and then to F2 in consecutive years. So he gets a B for his first half of his first F2 season. And to improve, he could close up to his teammate in the standings, that's Enzo Fittipaldi. Well, he does well. He does stay out of trouble, good at making up positions. He seems to do very well on circuits that he knows, so the European races in Zandvoort that he just had, and Monza coming up. He can definitely do well there for his next season in F2, which I'm sure he will get. He's a promising young Red Bull junior with a bright future ahead of him, so hopefully he gets his next year in F2. Next up, Enzo Fittipaldi, also Carlin, his second year in the championship now with Brazilian Euro farmer money behind him, so he'll definitely be racing in F2 for the next few years if he wants. 98 points compared to 100 at this point last year, so started better than last year with a run of points finishes and had the same number of podiums compared to this point last year, but got one win, which was the sprint race in Spa. That was his first win since the Formula Regional European Championship season in 2019, so it's good to see him back on the top step of the podium. He's very quick on his good days, qualifying second in Azerbaijan and Barcelona, so he gets a C-, minus because it is his second full-time season. He did do a fair chunk in 2021 as well, so he's very experienced. He's 7th, so he's not outperforming his rookie teammate Maloney as much as perhaps he should be. To improve, he could definitely improve his consistency. He crashed on the way to the grid for the sprint in Melbourne, that was a DNS, and then in the sprint race managed to crash in practically the same place as Nissany. Quite a scary incident. So to improve his consistency, what he does well, qualifying pace, I'd say, in a good car, which the Carlin certainly is, with a good team behind him, he can qualify well and he can put it on the front row. Next up, Théo Pourchaire, championship leader. He is 3rd in the standings. His 3rd season in F2, 1st in the standings. Felt like he came quite close to taking the title last year. He certainly took the fight to Drogovic in the first half, and then it looked as if he sort of gave up towards the end. That's probably quite harsh and doesn't tell the full story of his season. He was blighted by reliability, I remember, and some silly mistakes as well. And the title did go the way of Drogovic one round early, of course. It started well this season, pole and feature race in Bahrain, and that was his only win and his only pole as well. In Bahrain, Vesti has 4 wins and is 12 points ahead of him, so his consistency certainly shines through, and that's certainly one that he does. That is definitely the good point for him. It's an A- I've given him because it's his 3rd season and he kind of has to win if he has any chance of getting into F1. To improve, I'm not really sure what to say really. He's certainly had a very good season. He's 1st in the standings. I'd say just dominate your rookie teammate Martins even more than you already are. Although he has beaten you, Porsche, on qualifying and the unofficial qualifying standards, he often seems to out-qualify Porsche. So maybe that's to work on for next half of the season. Next up, Victor Martins. Very impressed with him, to be honest. To sum it up quickly, he qualifies well and then each week finds new and interesting ways to earn penalties and bin the race. He won F3 last year at his 2nd attempt, taking the fight to an experienced field this year with the likes of Vesti, Pourchaire and Iwasa. He's currently 5th in the standings though, behind Jack Doohan after his back-to-back feature race wins. He's had several podiums and feature race win in Silverstone. He has got a few penalties though, which is definitely what he could improve on. The car is doing very well on the ART Alpine Junior, so he's got certainly the close ties to an F1 team that he wants. He's up there with Jack Doohan, as well as being the people who are in the Alpine garage during the F1 weekend. While he does well, he is very good at qualifying, beating Théo Pourchaire in qualifying at the moment. So it's an A- from me. Certainly his consistency and too many penalties, I'd say. Next up, Fred Vesti in the Prema, 2019 FRECA champion, returns to Prema for his second season in F2. Pretty bad start, no points in Bahrain, DNF in the feature, although it picked up from then with 4 wins, including of course his pole and the win in Monaco. So that's a good weekend for him. He led the standings for a while. He lost it in Spa after crashing on the reconnaissance lap to the grid. Difficult conditions leaving the support paddock. He often starts quite slowly to seasons and then builds up slowly throughout his first and second year in various championships. I wonder if that makes him really suitable to F1. We've seen how quickly drivers can be dropped when they are slow to adapt. So I do hope that he does have a future in F1. He's a Mercedes junior, and I did think that he would get the Williams seat that Sargent might vacate if he ends up leaving the team. The Williams seat sort of becoming a Mercedes control seat as it was with Bottas and Russell before. Vesti gets an A grade from me. Very good race pace. He can make moves very well. Moves up, can race in the front, move up well from lowly grid positions as well. What can he improve on? Probably qualifying. His Prema teammate Oliver Behrman, rookie, outperforming him in qualifying pace. Not really a short-term goal of his, I'd say, but if he does move up to F1, become quicker to adapt. He got an FP1 outing in Mexico, so hopefully use that opportunity to really learn the ins and outs of an F1 team. His teammate Oliver Behrman is 6th in the standings, 102 points, beating Vesti in qualifying with 3 pole positions, including that pole in Jeddah with his steering wheel definitely not pointing up straight with his suspension and track rod damage. He was 3rd in his first season in F3. It's been pretty hard for rookies to make a good impression over the last couple of years in F2, many drivers being very experienced second and third year drivers at the front, but Behrman has certainly stood out for me as someone who you certainly expect to see qualifying on the front row. So very good start of the season for him. He gets an A+ for me for his first season. Very good qualifying, as I say. And to improve certainly his consistency, and that will come with time. I wouldn't be surprised to see him as F2 Championship next year. Certainly a championship contender if he does stay another season, which I no doubt he will get if nothing better comes his way. Next up, Jack Crawford, American driver, also moved up to F2 after just one season in F3. He was 7th last year. One more win so far this season in the sprint in the Red Bull Ring. Started from reverse grid pole. Funnily enough, his one win in F3 also came in the sprint in Red Bull Ring. He's a Red Bull junior. I certainly don't see his future being in F1 with them. If he does get dropped by the junior team, I don't think he will get a second season in an F2. Might go off to America, IndyCar, Indy Lights, whatever. He did USF 2000 earlier in his car career, so might go off to America to race there. He gets a grade C from me. He can withstand pressure to race at the front from his reverse grid pole in Red Bull Ring, and to improve suddenly his qualifying pace. He's often around the top 10, so another driver who can find himself on reverse grid pole one week and starting out of contention the next. Next up is Isaac Kadjar, another driver making the step up to F2 after just one season in F3. Definitely a better driver than his season shows. He's been too slow to adapt to this season, hasn't really been on the pace. Currently 15th in the standings, one podium in the Red Bull Ring sprint, best qualifying of 4th. He gets a C+. He has been pretty unlucky, but he has made some silly mistakes as well. He does stay out of trouble when it comes to other drivers. Retirement's coming in Monaco with an engine failure. And to improve, he could certainly stop making silly mistakes himself and going into the wall in Spa, for example, losing his front wing on the pit exit, and improve against his teammate. Next up, Ayumu Iwase, 3rd in the standings. Had a very good start, led the standings for a while. Now it's 34 points off the lead in the standings. He had a 5 podiums, including 3 wins. So he started better this year than he did last year. His 3 wins coming in the first 5 rounds, but it's dropped off massively since then. He did very well in his first season last year, after not a very good first season in F3. He did make the jump up very well. He gets an A grade from me, solid season. He's up there for now. He was up there for the AlphaTauri drive in place of F3's, along with Lawson. Very good race pace, very strong in races. Finished second in the Red Bull Ring feature after starting 16th, so can make up positions very well. To improve qualifying pace and consistency, I'd say only 1 pole, an average qualifying position of 8.6. So certainly doing better on the Sundays than on the Saturdays and Sundays than on the Fridays. Next up, Arthur de Clerc driving for Dams, along with Iwasa, moving up to F2 after an okay second F3 season. He was 6th in that championship for Prema. He's currently 14th in F2 with 39 points, tied with Hajar on points, but just ahead on countback. He's had 1 podium in the feature race in Australia. After Victor Martins and Hauger collided on the restart. He ended up taking 3rd place. He often qualifies outside the top 10, which is certainly something he can work to improve on. He gets a C+ from me. What does well in races well. He's scored in all but 2 feature races that he's finished, so he picks up points where it counts. Next up, Jack Dillon driving for Invicta Virtuosi, certainly taken off towards the end of the first half. With his 2 back-to-back wins in Hungaroring and Spa, but a slow start means he's only 4th at the moment. Second F2 season, I say despite that, he is a better driver than his season has gone so far. He has had a worse season, in my opinion, compared to his first season last year. The chaotic restart in Zandvoort meant he lost a good haul of points last year. Pretty bad start to this season though, no points in Bahrain, few strong finishes during the European season, but it seems bad luck has also impacted him. He's doing much better than Cordial in the other Invicta Virtuosi, so that's definitely a strong point for him. He gets a B+ grade from me. To improve, I'd say carry on this strong run of form into the second half of the season, and you might even be in the championship fight as well. Next up, Amory Cordial, not doing too well to be fair. No points, second season in F2, moved up after just 1 season in F3 after scoring no points there as well. Not part of any academy, seems to be mostly self-funded, so his future in F2 is uncertain. What he does well, he avoids crashing with other drivers, and that's kind of all I have to say about him really. I think a D grade for him. He's certainly not been up there in qualifying or in the race. To improve certainly his overall pace, I would say. Next up, Roy Nissany, his 5th season in F2 now, also with no points, sitting 20th in the standings. Average qualifying is 17th, hasn't done too well this season overall. He never really developed any pace in either of his 5 seasons. He gets a D- for me, comparing the two, Nissany and Cordial. The D- for Nissany because it is his 5th season and he really sort of needs to be up there if he wants any sort of career in motorsport at all. Brad Benavides, also with no points. Unfortunately, he finds himself without funding and replaced by Josh Mason. Not much to say about him so far. He has stayed out of trouble. He finished 14th in the Spa feature race. Tricky conditions, many drivers finding themselves out, so not bad for your first F2 weekend, especially with a jump up from Euro Formula. To improve, I'd say learn as much as you can in the second half of the season. Make the most of the opportunity that you have, and hopefully I have a move to F2 or even F3 for next year. Next up, Roman Sanek, Czech driver, finished 5th in F3 last year, his 3rd season in the championship. He stayed with Trident for his jump up to F2, qualified 9th in Bahrain, and dropped down from 2nd as he was on the reverse grid sprint to finish 13th. Then a retirement in the feature, so not a good start. That's as good as qualifying went, qualifying outside the top 10 for every other weekend. Best finish of 5th in the Red Bull Ring sprint, and quite a few retirements and collisions with other drivers. So I'd say to improve for him, definitely his qualifying pace, try and get yourself in the top 10 on the Friday, and defend better when it comes to withstanding pressure from behind. He gets a C grade from me overall. Well, he does well, better than Clement Novalak. his teammate. Oh, sorry, not his teammate. And I hope that the F3 Trident drivers, when they do move out to F2, move up somewhere other than their sister team, as they certainly deserve better than that. Next up, Novalak, just 2 points from the feature race in Baku. Technical infringement in Austria took his sprint podium away, so that's a shame for him. Collisions with other drivers, Brad Benavides in Silverstone, Kushmini in Monaco, so definitely one who finds himself in the wars quite a lot. He gets a grade C, races pretty well, still good as podium, although with his qualification that was starting from 20th, so he can make up places very well. To improve, never qualified in the top 10, so improve your Fridays, and like Stanek, you might find yourself up there on the first or second row in the sprint race. Next up, Richard Verschoor, a season blighted by penalties and disqualifications. At Zandvoort, he received a 3-place grid shot for impeding Zane Maloney. Those two made contact in Baku, where Verschoor was on reverse grid pole, and both ended up retirement, so he definitely could stay out of trouble a little bit more. Gets a B grade from me. He can race well. His feature race win came from 11th on the grid, so he certainly can be up there when misfortune goes the way of other drivers. Next up, Juan Manuel Correa, his first return to F2 after his accident, which of course claimed the life of Antoine Hubert of 2019, meant Correa missed almost 3 years of racing. So good, he's back on the horse, as it were, in F2. He's currently 18th in the standings with only 12 points. Never qualified inside the top 10, but a best finish of 4th. Gets a C+ grade from me. Only one retirement, where he spun in Spain and beached himself on the gravel, so he can stay out of trouble. And to improve certainly his qualifying pace, try and grab a sprint race win up there for a first or second row on the grid start in the sprint race, and try and get a decent haul of points there, end up on the podium. Next up, Kushmini. A very good driver, I'd say. Very good start of the season. Moved up from F3 after just one season. String of points finishes in the first few rounds. A podium in the sprint in Melbourne. That form has dropped off a little bit recently. A few costly retirements in feature races, including with his teammate, where he collided with him in Silverstone after qualifying a very impressive second. He gets a B grade for me. Very good start of the season, as I say. But to improve, definitely his consistency throughout the season. He definitely will get a second season next year, and hopefully he can improve on that. Next up, Ralph Boschung started very well, of course. Fairy tale win in Bahrain. His first win from pole in the sprint, and then came a second in the feature race. That was his first win in Formula 2 after starting his F2 career in 2017, so definitely very experienced driver, and very, very good to see him get his first win. That form was followed by 4th in the sprint race in Jeddah, from 2nd on the reverse grid, and then that was basically it. A few retirements in the next couple of rounds, a few lowly points finishes, a lowly points finish in Spa. Currently 16th in the standings, 35 points, most of those points coming from Bahrain, of course. Grade D, it sort of has to be after that longer time in F2. Well, he does well. He obviously had a very good start of the season, very impressive Bahrain round. To improve, it looks as if he will re-sign for 2024, so just enjoy his racing. Looks as if F2 will be the highest he will compete before probably settling for a pro drive in GTs and sports cars or something. So just enjoy the rest of the season in F2 and maybe try and repeat his Bahrain performance as well. So that does it for the driver reviews. We're going to go on now to the sprint race in Zandvoort. Before the race, Teo Porcher had some rear suspension damage. It wasn't from and off, I don't think, but it was the second time in a row the championship leader has not been able to start the race. So it was a pit lane start as ART tried to get their car fixed and get their driver back into the race. Hadjar was now leading the race. A lot of spray, very bad visibility. Kushmini made contact with Jack Crawford. Miney lost control. He was hit by his Campos teammate Ralph Boschung. Miney got sent up into the air off the track, hitting a marshalling light signal. That's how high he went up. It was a T-bone contact. The speeds were very low compared to what F2 cars can achieve. And despite that, it looked as if Boschon was pretty well injured. He was limping away from the car, but other than that, he was okay. Not seeing the onboard, I would have liked to see what the onboard looked like. That must have been pretty scary. And the session was red flag from that. The cars did go out again under the safety car, but the conditions were too bad. Session was red flagged again and not resumed. No points awarded. I'm not sure there was a podium, but Hajar took the checkered flag or the red flag first, was classified first, but received no points. That was pretty good for Pourchaire, who was still at the back. Didn't get any points going the way of his rivals, and was still in the championship lead. In the feature race, Jack Crawford was on pole. There was a high probability of rain, and they did start to rain on the start. The formation lap began under the safety car. Still on dry tyres, but the reason for that was half the grid was dry and the other half was wet. So it was just deemed fairer if everyone was taking the racing start in one single file line under the normal safety car restart procedures. Josh Mason ended up stalling again off the grid and then had a pit lane start. That's his second stalling, pulling off the grid in his, at the moment, short F2 career. He stalled in Spa, of course. Jack Crawford got a very good jump at the start, although Jack Doohan ended up spinning on the damp banking. He rolled down and got himself stuck on the inside. Very disappointed it looked like he was. So he couldn't even take the restart. It's very similar in the sense that he couldn't take the restart on a safety car last year at Zandvoort. So certainly not a good track for Jack Doohan. Both Bremers ended up spinning on the restart. Frederick Vesti on his own at the first corner, and Ollie Behrman was tagged by Juan Manuel Correa, and Martin had to take evasive action going onto the gravel. Correa was given a 10-second penalty for that. The safety car was brought out again, and on the restart there was contact between Iwasa and Miney, both taken to the escape road at turn 1. Iwasa tried to make the move a bit too fast, went straight on in front of the path of Miney, who was just trying to take the corner on his own. Then came the pit stops. Maloney pitted first. Many people reacted to that, trying to get the medium tyres on to run to the end. I did wonder about those cold medium tyres on a damp track, and a very tight turn on the pit exit did remind me of something that might have reminded Isaac Hadjar of his Spa accident, where on cold tyres on a damp track he ended up going into the barriers, of course, at Spa. Pourchaire and Fittipaldi nearly made contact. Pourchaire getting in front of Fittipaldi on the pit stops and then crashed on the outlap at turn 7. So not a very good day for Pourchaire overall. He was in the car for quite a long time, very winded from that accident, went pretty hard at the barriers, but I think he's all okay. Can't make the mandatory pit stops under the safety car, so everyone came in under the yellow flags before the safety car was deployed. Vesti pits. The pit stop was not completed successfully at all. The rear tyres ended up coming off, and both championship contenders were out of the race. Another safety car after all of that chaos, and Clement Novalak was now leading from Jack Crawford, same Maloney. Behrman was up to 6 after his spin at the start, so very good for him. Richard Verschoor in his home race was in 4th. Maloney took 2nd place from Jack Crawford, very good move at the first corner. Victor Martin and Ollie Behrman got together as Behrman was making the move around the outside of the first corner. Then he dove to the inside of the banked hairpin. Martins ran Behrman very wide, and Behrman hit the wall and got pretty bad damage. Might have been contact between them, but Martin certainly didn't leave him enough room, and Martin ended up getting a penalty for that. The race was time limited. Battle for second between the two Red Bull juniors, Maloney and Crawford. Was thinking that could help Novalak up front to extend his lead a bit more, and that's ended up what he did, as he ended up taking the win. He only scored 2 points up to this point, and he won from 13th on the grid. His last win was in the BRDC British F3 at Silverstone, the championship, which he won. So a very good first win for him. So Maloney took his 4th podium, followed by fellow Red Bull junior Jack Crawford. Victor Martins was dropped down to 9th with his penalties. Not a good weekend for him. Neither for Iwasa, who finished 13th. He hit the wall on the banking, coming out of the banking for the last time. So salt in the wounds for him. Maloney was pretty annoyed with himself, the Carlin driver, saying he should have won. Maybe a bit harsh on himself. He did get his podium, so very good points all for him. Okay, that does it for the F2 round of Zandvoort. Next up is the Indy Next at Gateway. It was Christian Rasmussen on pole with Hunter McElroy in 2nd and Nolan Siegel in 3rd. Siegel and McElroy got side by side in the opening turn, with Hunter McElroy staying ahead. Daniel Frost and James Rowe got past Nolan Siegel, who was dropping down quite fast. Ran wide at one stage, Rasmussen ran wide at one stage, lost the lead to McElroy, who was then forced up into the marbles by traffic. Rasmussen then got the better of McElroy when he ran into traffic and was now in front again. James Rowe brought out the yellow flags after running a bit too high in the marbles, hit the wall and retired from the race, bringing out the full course caution. Christian Rasmussen got a very good jump at the restart. McElroy was still trying to get past Rasmussen, but not quite able to do the rest of the race, and Rasmussen took the win. 2nd place went to Louis Foster and 3rd to Hunter McElroy. Next up in Indy Next is Portland. Rasmussen is now 51 points ahead of the championships. 3 races to go. Portland, the double-header at Laguna Seca. So Rasmussen looking set for the championship now. He's had 4 race wins, by far the most of anybody so far. In other news, Robert Schwartzman made his FP1 debut at the Dutch Grand Prix in place of Carlos Sainz. He was P19, ahead of behind Leclerc in 16th, so they obviously weren't doing too many fast qualifying simulations in the Ferrari garage. Difficult to say how he fared in that instance. I believe the Ferrari drivers elected which races they wanted to miss to let their junior drivers fill in for them, and Sainz chose the Dutch Grand Prix for that, so Schwartzman had his first go in F1 cars. Liam Lawson, of course, made his Formula 1 Grand Prix debut in the Netherlands as well, after Daniel Ricciardo ended up injuring his hand in an FP1 accident. So that was a very good start to him. I'm very impressed with him. Didn't out-qualify, so no doubt a pretty bad qualifying. But that was his first qualifying in dry tyres, first running in dry tyres after a wet Saturday. So very good overall P13 finish for him on the Sunday in the Grand Prix. So definitely a very good day for him. In other news, Pepe Marti joined the Red Bull program, so he'll no doubt be taking a seat in F2 next year with his Red Bull branded car, and I do hope he can improve on this season, hopefully be challenging. Maybe for the title, he'll certainly be expected to after doing so this year in F3. Over in the States, Linus Lundqvist joined Chip Ganassi, the team in IndyCar for next year. Said it was a dream come true, and unsurprisingly, he'll be replacing Marcus Ericsson at the team after he moves to Andretti. I certainly see Lundqvist as a championship contender for next year. If not next year, certainly in the years after, in his what is probably a multi-year deal for the team. And I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see race wins going his way next year as well. Also released was the new Formula 2 car. So it's good to see developments being made in the spec series in the lower down on the ladder. 60mm longer than the current car, same width, same height, same wheelbase, same 3.4 V6 turbo engine from Mechachrome, so expect the same delightful ear-piercing upshifts. It's only an acquired taste, delightful to hear in person if you ever get the chance, in my opinion at least. Very interesting looking rear wing. Hopefully that can improve the racing. That's certainly what it's designed to do, but of course we'll have to wait and see. Other improvements, of course, include safety and improving the raceability of the car as well. At the test at the Verano circuit, Tatiana Coldron was in the car. saying she was very excited to drive it and wanted to have the opportunity to race as well against other drivers. She wanted to be back in the season full time next year, and I do hope she does get the opportunity to do that. So that does it for the Formula 2 at Zandvoort, Formula 2 driver ratings, and Indy Next to Gateway. Up next, we've got, of course, the full roundup of the F3 and F2 at Zandvoort, Indy Next at Portland as well, and hopefully some other news, hopefully some more contracts, silly season stories coming up. So stay tuned to the next episode of the Formula Next Gen podcast.